make an attempt to not, well, we're going to not pick up where Nick left off, because he's going to do that. Because when I spoke with him, I was speaking with him concerning the how-tos that he was about to teach last week. So I said to him, we're just going to leave it where it is until he does the how-tos. However, I want to talk even more
at the tone,
about the whole concept
Foundation of faith.
of feminine energy, because I believe that we are indeed approaching the precipice of a major paradigm shift. And what I mean by that is that I believe that we are at a place of understanding the wisdom of those things that have been hidden, some of them since the beginning of time. And when I say beginning of time, I'm not talking about Genesis 1:1, because that was not the beginning of time. I'm talking about since the beginning of time. I think that a lot of the wisdom is hidden, and it's hidden right before our eyes. The idea of the tree of life, that's where it's hidden in the garden. And I believe that that the garden was set up, or this flaming sword was put there, that the metaphor was put there in order to separate time from the spiritual, for lack of a better term. So we could do a line of demarcation between the two and move forward from there. I looked at some words the other day in Genesis. I began to look at the whole concept of day and night, light and darkness, morning and evening, and all of those words are different. Now this is what I found, and those of you who've done some research in these areas, looking for Aramaic and Hebraic terminology, there are no definitions for Aramaic or Hebrew. They are concepts. Every word is a concept. Have you found that to be true?
In a sense, because it can mean, I mean, you could tag so many words to the concept.
Right. So it's not, so by virtue of definition, what we do is limit the power of the word. Can you see that? It appears that the further you get from the east, moving towards the west, conceptual desire, conceptual understanding, conceptual of acceptance began to diminish. The predominant concepts in the West are only the concepts that can be proven by science. If it's a concept that cannot be scientifically reproduced, it's not accepted. So when we talk about feminine, and masculine energy, we are talking about a concept that is very difficult for Western minds to accept or to understand. And the reason is because we see femininity simply as being a woman, but we actually don't see femininity. We see a manifestation of it, but we don't actually see it. It's like no one living has seen Jesus. It was said that, it is taught rather, that in order to be an apostle, you had to have seen Jesus. And if that is true, then Paul was not an apostle. But the argument is that he saw him on the Damascus road, right? But that's not true, because the scripture does not say that. It says that he saw a light, and the light knocked him from his donkey, and a voice spoke to him. And he asked, who is it? And he said, I am Yeshua, I am Jesus. But he did not see him. You see what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So the whole concept of seeing someone is seeing who they are in terms of personality manifestation, that kind of thing. The idea of seeing someone goes far beyond the external image. In the Aramaic and in the Hebrew, there are no descriptions of the external image. Everything is internal. And there are conceptual, internal, whatever, ideas, or ideals, I should say. So, having said that, how do we get from where we are to not only recognizing it in a academic way that we are the Adam, and I mean the Adam, we are the ADAM. How do we get to the place of not just thinking that, not just voicing that, but actually manifesting that? Because if we can see that, or we can accept it for what it is, then we're better able to begin to manifest it. But maybe, just maybe, our egos are in the way. I don't think daily activities are in the way, unless they're a priority, your number one priority. But I do think that our egos are probably in the way. There are some things that we are unwilling to accept because we don't feel comfortable with them. Does that make sense? There are things that we are not comfortable with, but we don't understand. No one can explain to you how a sperm and an egg ends up looking like this. They can explain that. They know what happens. But what, you can go through the stages, but what actually takes place when that happens? The whole idea of a body in the Aramaic sense is a substance. It talks about, when it talks about there's no living body, it's a substance, but the body itself is considered a corpse. So when it talks about the idea of something living or body living, it's a substance. So if it's a substance, then what is that substance? That substance is the material that we're made of, physical, right? Now, in order for the cells to continuously reproduce, there has to be something taking place called intercourse, intimacy, male, female. So in order for the cells or that substance to grow, male, female energy has to be there. In order for that substance to live, male, female energy has to be there. Because nothing lives without what? Energy, life, light. Nothing lives without that. Nothing at all lives without energy. So when we talk about the feminine energy, we are not so much talking about a bodily manifestation as much as we are talking about being open, being a womb for light to impregnate, so that it can produce what it is designed to produce. Does that make sense? And I think we talk about that quite a bit. We need to be open to change. We need to be open to understand it, that kind of thing. So that is one of the reasons when we look at everything from Genesis forward, is day and night. It's light and darkness. Yeah, everything has duality from after the first verse. And the thing that's most intriguing to me is that everything that we see come into being came from darkness itself. Everything came from darkness itself. So the feminine energy coming from darkness itself, just like the masculine energy, could it possibly be that one of the reasons we don't understand it is because we still see darkness as being the absence of light? Even though we talk about darkness as confusion, misery, lack of understanding, do we really believe that? You know, are we still at the same place where we were with darkness being represented by the absence of light? And I believe that one of the reasons that females, or let me back up. I believe that one of the reasons the sexual assaults in the military are becoming we're becoming more aware of them, is because it is time for us to recognize the violence that's committed against females. And the same violence that's against the physical female is the violence that's in the other realm, that's against the feminine energy or the feminine aspect of the spirit. So, and this is the paradox, that there is always the discussion of the Shekinah, but there is a battle against the feminine energy, and the Shekinah is the feminine aspect, which is what we call the Holy Spirit. So that to me is kind of crazy that you know we get caught up in those things. The Ruach Hakma, Holy Wisdom, or the Holy Spirit, the Holy Breath, is something that we rail against. I was listening to this thing during the week, and the statement was made by someone from Pakistan, and what he said is that a woman in Pakistan who reports a rape is more likely to be killed than her rapist is to go to jail. And her death is more likely to be at the hands of her fellow tribesmen because she is considered unclean because she's been raped. You see what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So there seems to be not so much an outcry, but a visibility of those things that are perpetrated against females. And I believe that that's being done so that we can begin not only to recognize it, but so that the injustices or the violence that's being perpetrated can be dealt with, so balance can be brought. Does that make sense?
Yes. Another meaning for darkness is secret place, or to hide something, or something that's concealed. And so if we stop looking at darkness only as the negative from our perspective, like misery, etc., it's like you said previously, it's just not known to our spiritual awareness yet, whatever it is. For instance, if everything came out of darkness, how can darkness be bad?
Right.
How can it be totally negative?
And the whole idea of, Plato and the fellows are the ones who pushed the idea of darkness being evil. That's where it actually came from, Greek philosophers. The whole idea of good and evil, in the sense that we believe it, came from Greek philosophy. It was unknown to the world to be a negative thing until the Greek philosophers began to spread, that belief. That whole idea of heaven being above and hell being below, Greek, that came out of Greek mythology. It had nothing to do with Eastern thought. The separation of man from his environment, and I say that very loosely when I say man, from his environment came from Western thought. It is not an Eastern thought, because we were believed to be one with everything. And that thus we were able to accomplish things that now we call miracles. Weather, in terms of weather changes, dealing with the weather, bringing rain, etc. We right now, we don't do that anymore, because
for security purposes, this call has been
we don't believe that we are capable of doing it anymore. You see? And when we understand that it was the elderly females who actually made the decisions in the villages, and the males would go to the females for direction. I remember earlier Richard was talking about the veil over the face. I remember when I was growing up that most of the people who I saw giving out community advice were old females. It was not men, and men were coming, and then they were carrying it. Did y'all have that experience?
Yeah,
It was old females.
probably did.
It was the grandmother image thing where the wisdom came from, and that thing got turned upside down. Actually, we lost that sense of community with integration. We just left it behind us. Instead of integrate, we actually assimilated. So we left it behind us. And I believe that now it is time for us to begin to revisit those things. To begin to understand the power, the significance, the importance of what we have left behind us. And the very thing that we left behind us is the womb of wisdom. And that's the very thing that we need the most. So anyone else? Any comments?
When we talked about the tree of life, and right there where dot is, where knowledge is, it's perceived to be a gap, or
Right.
a darkness, or something is hidden. And we only bridge that gap when we see things spiritually. We can't bridge that gap between knowledge and understanding, true knowledge and understanding, unless we approach it from a spiritual perspective. And so I'm wondering if that's some of the mystery of that abyss, that darkness, that perceived darkness, that gap.
I think oh, Sheldon.
Yeah, I definitely think that's where the darkness is, because I was listening to the other things that were being said about darkness, but in regards to darkness, and darkness also has to deal with, in a sense, of fear. And it's as if wisdom is hiding in the darkness, but wisdom is only hiding in the darkness because we have to seek it, and we only can seek that wisdom through ourselves and exploring parts of ourselves that we may be afraid of, which is definitely what the masculine has been doing for a very long time. So that's why, I mean, anytime, and Nick has talked about it, and we've talked about it, to truly have knowledge or understanding of something is only to have experienced it, which you only can do on a spiritual level, not on a physical level. So that's why it's like a dark area that you have to actually experience, but you have to experience it not with fear. You have to get beyond your fear. If you continue to have fear and you fight it, then you will never have that true experience.
What does he mean by with the fear? What do you mean by fear? Having fear?
Okay. Okay, I can go back. Pastor, I'm going to go back what I spoke with you about last week to explain it. Okay, so when it comes to the masculine or men basically trying to confine and control femininity, it doesn't start with them all of a sudden just getting together, just thinking, you know what, I can't stand those women over there. That's not how it happens. Okay? That's not how it portrays itself. What actually happened is, and Nick, and I'm going to quote or go back to something that Nick and Pastor said last week. So Nick was talking about the only thing that you try to control is things that you actually feel. And Pastor Richard made the statement that when he was in college, when he really, I guess, became very, very in tune or aware or sensitive to the femininity, when all of these females were coming to him with their issues and he could open himself up to, hear them and understand them. Mm-hmm. In order to do that, he had to tap into the femininity that was in himself in order to understand where they were actually coming from. Okay. Which is expose that part of himself basically to himself. Without that experience, he would not have known that. So that's what I'm talking about, fear. Okay. When you have men in the military or whomever else, they're like super masculine and they cannot relate to women and they try to control women, it is because that is the portion of themselves that they are fighting and they are trying to control and they refuse to acknowledge exists. So that within them is that darkness within them. However, it is potential of wisdom if they would just experience themselves in that aspect. It is a part of them. There's no way you can get beyond that. So by you, anytime there's a part of you that you refuse to acknowledge or deal with or experience, then you're not being the Adam that Pastor is talking about. So that's the fear I'm talking about. The only thing I mean by fear is a portion of yourself that you're afraid of and you try to control. So it's not like some big bad thing or it's not Plato's, I think it was Plato's good and evil. It's not that good and evil. Everything is essentially good in the spiritual realm. There is no evil. So when I say fear, don't think like, oh, it's fear. No. It's a part of yourself that you need to delve into further, and I guess kind of like just let go.
So the light is exposing all these things as far as like with the military and stuff, because women, the feminine aspect of men and women, the both are not being manifested or whatever, respected. Okay.
That's a good word.
Yeah, because the fear is just, only thing fear is not understanding and not facing it, and light will be just giving it to your attention to actually experience and understand it and put something in its rightful place.
And that's why it's so much homosexuality too.
Yes.
With the men.
Because it's a fight.
Because
there are a couple of things.
No, the only thing I was going to say from something that impressed me a long time ago, maybe it's a bit simplistic, but I think you can use it here, is the notion of fear, at least in terms of your physical body, is an alert. How you choose to deal with it comes later. Hence that phrase, I guess, that's in that movie, danger is real, fear is a choice. It's a bit simplistic, but it's kind of like that. So in and of itself, in other words, in terms of your physical being, it's a way for your body to alert you that something's not right. And then how you deal with it, which is why, and I think I mentioned this before, which really impressed me. People have been attacked from behind, stabbed and things, and they feel great pain. They've been attacked from the front and feel nothing, because they know and understand what's happening.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So if you kind of play with that a little bit, so it's not that fear's anything necessarily of itself good or bad. We have to put all these labels on things, which is, you're right, what really gives them the wrong authority or power for us. It's an alert, if we use the word like that. But the other thing I wanted to ask then is, it seems to me that what we're really saying is there is no darkness. It's a perception of an absence of light, it seems to me what we're ultimately saying, because if wisdom is there, but you don't see it, it's like turning the lights off and you don't see the person in the room. The person's there. So in that real sense, ultimately, there's not a duality. It's maybe like I and I am. We create the duality, and then we get distracted by it, I guess you could say.
And you're right. We do. We
So
have
there is
created-
really only light. It's like my father tried to tell me once, there's no negative energy really in physics. It's just the absence of, or, you know, it's a little bit like that, but we think, oh no, there's, you know, positive and negative,
Because
well,
that's
there's
what
no
we've been taught.
negative.
Yeah, there's no negative.
right? But we grew up, oh no, we're dead sure, that's what it is, because that's what we've been told. And now you have to unravel all that and understand it in a different way.
But
The-
if there's no negative, there's no positive.
The
But that's the
fear.
way we grew up.
But
with
see, the duality is what we created.
So if we take away the negative, then all that's left is balance. It's just
Guess what the
how we
duality
see it.
that we created is? There's the creator and here we are. That's the duality.
Okay,
You see what I'm talking about?
yeah.
But that's what we have created.
Well, we're back to the thing Nick had, or we put on the board, that if you do the geometry and you start from a fraction off center,
How far you are.
just extrapolate that out 1,000 miles or whatever you want, and now that's, so even, so in the beginning, the difference between I am gives rise to the possibility of duality opposite. And now just take that to some, wherever your culture is telling you to
That's
go.
why it's not I am. Because I am means that you are. But if it's I, we're one.
Right, so the point is the difference between the two is already that quote-unquote gap.
Right.
Now, if you move forward, so to speak, in that gap,
It gets wider.
it can only get wider.
Um,
Unless you're.
I know, I think I understand the mechanism that when you talk about the stabbing in front and behind, right?
I think I'm right.
I was reading some stuff, well, I know what, I don't know, I read or listened to it anyway. What popped in my mind was, well, you remember when you were talking about the accident you had in Kenya? And it was like in black and white, was it?
Slow motion.
Slow motion. What I understood is that the brain shuts down everything except what you need to survive in an instant. And there are, when people see things in black and white, it's because the brain has shut down the mechanism to see in color because it doesn't need it. Every single thing that you need to survive, that's what the brain uses, but everything else, it shuts down instantly. So when it was going in slow motion, it went in slow motion, or it goes in slow motion, so that you have opportunity to do what's necessary in order for you to survive. The brain does that automatically. So when you're facing a danger, the brain releases the endorphins as necessary for your survival. But if you're not aware of it, then it doesn't happen until after the fact.
Okay, given what you just said, the brain produces what is
Speak of
necessary
that.
for it to survive. Okay, then describe that. Then why is there a need there, say with an accident, that you would see your entire life flash? Because I had one and I saw my entire life from birth up until the point of the accident flash.
But when your life flash before you is done in order for you to bring you remembrance of why you need to survive. Survival, the body is designed to survive. The brain does whatever it takes for the body to survive. If you begin to freeze, your extremities get cold first because the blood starts contracting to the core to keep the core alive. And then the less vital organs begin to die in sequence until they get to the heart itself. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So that the body is not designed body is designed rather to survive. Now, having said that, looking back at what Sheldon was talking about concerning the feminine, as he was talking, I thought about my upbringing. How during my upbringing, I had uncles, but all of my uncles were away. Like I had one uncle who was in Union, but he was in the military. As soon as he got in the military, he went to D.C. So my upbringing was primarily females. And you've heard me say this before, that my grandma, Miss Sally White, and Miss Sophia are the ones who prayed for me when I had pneumonia. Doctor said I was going to die. For the summertime, I had, anyway, I live. Obviously, I'm here. But they also, especially Miss Sophia, said that boy got something on him. Don't worry about it, Rosa. He a fool now, but he gonna be all right. God got something for him. It was females who saw that. It was the females who recognized that. Mama said, "You going to a Catholic school?" Grandmama said, "No, he's not. He's not going to a Catholic school." And she gave her reasons for it, because they believed that the Pope God, that kind of thing. So what I'm saying is, maybe, Sheldon, that those were the things that were opening me up, for the feminine. When I went to school, it was an opening of it even further, and now it's a recognition of it. Why? Because this is what I was destined to do. This is it. This is the reason I came into the earth. And God knows I've done everything I could do not to do it. And I looked for opportunities not to do it. And I'm talking about earlier, in my life. But there was no escaping it. And so I believe that during the course of time with my grandma, Miss Sophia, and Miss Ella White, that I was in their spiritual womb. And they were molding me into what I am supposed to be and giving me a sensitivity for the female. And I noticed that when my uncles would come home, how they were the males who took care of stuff, And there was as I explained, I think last week, there was a difference in what they did as opposed to the females. It wasn't staying in your place. It was actions. It was like working in conjunction with each other, a mutual respect for each other. And so, but now, what we have done, Richard said it concerning the geometry, how the gap and how wide it has gotten. Look how wide the gap has gotten between male and female. It's tremendous. Right now, we talk about how we respect females, but you are not respecting a female if you only respect them within the boundaries that you set. You see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Sheldon.
And then, to be all honest with you, going back when it wasn't necessarily a situation when you were just talking about the different roles, the masculine was only there to protect the feminine because the feminine was far more important when it came to spirituality. So the masculine, when you say was action, was more concerned with actually the physical things. And in terms of things that needed to be done, as far as the spiritual things, as far as the guidance, before as those decisions making, with those decisions that you were talking about being made, and how the females made all the decisions for the tribe and things like that. All of that came from the feminine. That's why the men were pretty much just warriors or whatever. That's the reason why.
Now, that plays out then to what you remember a few weeks ago we were talking about females in combat in the military. A few weeks ago. That plays into that. that the whole idea of the male as being the, as Sheldon said, warrior, is to protect the female. And you only protect what you value.
True.
You protect what you value. Now, valuing something doesn't mean that you think is important in and of itself. Value also means that it means something to you, so you go protect it because of you. That's selfishness.
Right.
You see what I'm talking about?
Well,
But, go ahead.
the I guess the corrupted other side of that is protecting a woman because she can't do it for herself.
That
That is the part
That's
that women are railing against.
That's the thing. Because they can't do it for themselves, that denies the power, the energy, the ability, the assets of the feminine energy. That in itself denigrates feminine energy. The protection is because you don't want the source of your wisdom to be destroyed. You don't want the source of life to be destroyed. You know, Nick talked about. Go ahead.
And this is not a good example, and this is actually watering down the situation that we're actually talking about. But that's look at the government and look at the president. It's like if I say if because I'm not saying it's the case. If this nation could only go forth and be prosperous or whatever, if the president survives, so we go to great lengths to protect the president. So the only thing we're saying, that's not a good example, but the feminine is the president. So as far as humanity and mankind is concerned, the femininity has to be protected, and the femininity needs to be allowed to focus on solely what it is meant to focus on, what it's supposed to do, which is the spiritual. So that's kind of like how we need it, the concept that we're trying to convey here.
Well, that's a far cry from the man as the head of the household.
Oh,
The woman is the president.
most definitely. The only man that's head of the household, only time he's head of the household when he say it.
Yes.
I think the,
When he's allowed to say it.
Yeah.
I think the perverted side of that too, in addition to the corrupted side, is when the masculine feels like they own that femininity and they want to control it. She belongs to me.
Yeah.
If I can't have her, nobody else will, or something like that.
property.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like property.
Suppose for a moment then that
Yeah, but that's not, you could only think that way if you think the feminine is external and outside of yourself.
And that's
Yeah.
why,
And
that's what most people
that's what
say.
most of yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the analogy of the present though is interesting in a way, because now suddenly what passed through my mind was this horrific struggle we seem to have with the leadership in this country. And I would use the word leadership more than the position itself. But maybe that's a whole other discussion. What is real leadership, and how much of that, if you look at it through a feminine, masculine,
I
eye.
wrote something on that.
The struggle, it seems to me now, with what we call our leadership is that it's not being allowed to be balanced in any of that. It's being really contained, constrained, and forced to be what you get when you have a masculine with a disconnect to the other, right? So you think, why do we celebrate monarchs in the past who had periods of peace and cultural and artistic development, all that kind of stuff, as opposed to conquerors? You know what I mean? So I mean, it's playing out that way as well.
What you're saying, Richard, does have some relevance, but from the bigger picture, the only thing that is, no.
What a change.
It's what leadership is. With leadership, you're lending yourself to the betterment of everyone who's actually under you, and that just got switched upside down, where leadership is how can I get something for myself? So I mean, it's just selfishness. So that's the only difference is that guy thing. And no, you're not going to celebrate people who did peaceful things in the past and were peaceful leaders, because if I am a leader today and I am the type of leader where I want to basically get everything to benefit me, then I'm not about to show you all these peaceful leaders. Then you're I'm not going to do that. So that is. And then what Audrey, what you said about being the head of the household, which is also I find kind of funny. In Native American, some Native American tribes, the females ran the house, and when they were tired of their husband, they put their husband's stuff out on the porch outside the teepee or whatever, and he basically had to go and find himself.
Yep, that's right, it was their butt for fortune.
And see,
It's not Native American only.
that's the whole idea of the femininity. Recognizing not so much what it is as much as what it means to us to survive. When you look at the thing I wrote concerning the androgynous man, when you look at it, how many sperm does it take just for one to make it to one egg?
Zillion.
You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just all these sperm trying to make it to one egg. So it takes that much femininity to bring life, but take all these to make sure we make it. Isn't that something?
Yeah, that is something.
But then when it does make it, it becomes Adam in the womb. And the Adam is where? In a dark place. And when it reaches fruition, it comes out to a world of duality. So we have to, in a sense, we have to go back to the beginning, to where we are spiritually, but not where we are mentally. What was it, Richard?
No, I was just thinking you can make a lot of jokes around that, but it makes me think too. Then that we go back to saying what we've said for months. What's coming out in the Roman Catholic Church, what's coming out in the military. It's so paradoxically, if you didn't have women joining the military, if you didn't have the military saying we're going to put them more so in harm's way in combat, you wouldn't have brought this to the surface.
Right.
All of this would have gone on, probably, but not in a way that it was unavoidable to draw attention to it. You know what I'm saying? Because now this woman is in uniform. She's not just some guy, the guy was beating up, who's a civilian kind of thing, if you know what I mean. And the whole idea of being in uniform for men is, hey, duty, honor, country, valor, blah, blah, blah. How can that fit with this? So it forced to the surface even that whole concept.
I mean, and you could do that, those paradoxes down the line.
Yeah.
You could do it with slavery. If it were not for slavery, how much light would be in this nation? What would this country be if it had not been for slavery? Because the only reason that it's the richest country in the world because it had free labor. You see?
300 years.
Yeah, it had free labor. And left itself an opening to re-enslave. By virtue of the amendment that ended slavery said, except for if we commit a crime. So there are so many paradoxes that we can bring to bear and begin to understand, but then is that not the same thing as light and darkness? Same thing, same principle is involved here. When Sheldon was talking about the president, something dawned on me. Suppose he's being constricted because he is being kept in a womb of confusion, but yet, no matter how tight the constriction is, those things that needs to be done are getting done. Economy's picking up. The healthcare thing is dropping. Those kinds of things are happening anyway. You're squeezing it, but the light's still coming out. Now, suppose for a moment, and that this is just a supposition, suppose for a moment that the light had to be in this place first, and now the womb is going to come by virtue of a woman being present next, in order to bring everything to fruition. You know, suppose that is what's taking place here. And that could very well be what we are about to experience. And I say that because without the female, a family, a nation, a community cannot move forward. It just can't do it. As long as they're suppressed, you cannot move forward. You can look at, you can think you're moving forward. The amount of money you have doesn't mean you're moving forward. It's how you look at things, for lack of a better term, from a moral perspective, in terms of how you relate to each other. How do you deal with each other? Moving forward is not letting people starve or die because they don't have insurance. That's not moving forward. If you really, really think about it, it's the female who's pushing the hardest for life in terms of letting people die because of lack of insurance. Men did that and are still doing it. The whole idea, well, let me put this out there. I read, was I told this? Either I read or was told, anyway, that the reason Gaddafi had to be taken off the scene is because he had met with the Organization of African, or OAU in it, of the African Union, and they had decided that they were going to begin to control their own resources, and he was like the point man for this. And they began to institute plans for doing this, and that's why he had to be taken off the scene, because he was actually in the process of moving to that place. And the thing that was shocking to them, whoever them, the people are, is that Northern Africa had no connection with Sub-Saharan Africa. They did not even consider them as people. But with that connection being made, that meant that unity was about to take place in a way that the continent has never seen it. So having said that, the question is, who are the they, if that is true, if that is indeed true, who are the they who took him off the scene? Men. Men did that. Men are the ones who make the decision for the greatest amount of destruction. Who are the ones who made the decision for the trail of tears? Men. And now the price is being paid. It is no coincidence that the Midwest is having the weather that is having. That is no coincidence. There are no coincidences in the realm of the spirit, neither are there coincidences in the realm of the physical.
I was wondering if you were going to bring up Tornado Alley. You got the track of the hurricanes and then the tornadoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly Oklahoma, which is where they landed.
Right. And then when you began to look at the Montana and how they went in there and massacred the Native Americans there, and then look at the path of the hurricanes from the African coast. I mean, all these things are no coincidence. They are happening for a reason. And we have to understand that there is a paradigm shift, not taking place, but it has already taken place, and we are ready for another one to take place. But it will not happen, it would not have happened, rather, if there were not someone in the earth recognizing not just the powers that be in the earth, but the powers that are for real, in terms of masculine and feminine being one. In terms of the atom still existing beyond what we read there in the scriptures as though it has ended. I believe that something that was said in that scripture is speaking very loudly to us today. One of the things that was written was that Jesus was he was the superior Adam. You know, the first Adam, but that doesn't say first. It says superior Adam, which means that if we can do what he did, then the superior Adam, what makes him superior, is the one who recognizes who he is and still chooses to be one with the Creator as opposed to creating his own creator. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And the shift of the paradigm have to be that instead of this thing that we call death and hell, that we understand that the lake of fire is us that is going to be cast into.
Mm-hmm.
The lake of fire is us, and we are the ones who do the casting. And that the purification of it comes from that. And I don't want to delve too much into the thing of death because there's so many of us looking at that. But the whole idea of it has got to deal with more of what we see in the natural than with the spirit exiting the body. There has to be more than that. It has to deal with what we see in the natural more so than the spirit leaving the body itself. Yeah.
Can you explain more about where the lake of fire?
The lake of fire. Fire is for purification.
Right.
And it's in Revelation talks about death and hell being cast into the lake of fire.
Mm-hmm.
And hell is the adversarial thoughts and actions that come from those thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And death is a distance or a separation between the Creator and us. Those things have to be purified. They have to be brought to the place where they were supposed to be from beginning. And if we were brought into being in order to be creators in the image, and we were. So what did we create? We created hell, we created death, we created all these things. So now we have to bring them under subjection to the messianic consciousness.
Okay.
That makes sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. Shelley.
Oh, the only thing I was going to say is it's basically not living as who you are, living a false life. And of course, when we say false life, well, it's the opposite of a false life. It's just you living as the superior Adam, which is knowing exactly who you are. And so going through those, that hellacious experience is to actually, to take you closer to the Adam.
Because no one recognizes the Creator, usually no one does, until there's a problem.
Yeah.
It's almost like we have to be pressured. I was listening at a report that talks about how kids are not going to church. Did you hear that? The report that churches are dying because the young people are not going. But the same report said this, that young people are becoming more and more spiritual. They're just not going to church.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they're not going to church, yet they're becoming more and more spiritual, is because the church is not spiritual. It's a business. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So if it would seem to me that if they're becoming more and more spiritual, then that's what they will be drawn to. But it seems to be repelling them because they're not getting answers. What do we do with this? We recognize that that the thing that we call church is not the womb that will bring us to beginning, but it is the womb that will bring us to search for beginning.
So it has its purpose.
Oh yes, most definitely has its purpose. It's the thing that brings us to search for beginning. And the search always begins in the mind and leads to the spiritual. Can you see that? Always begin in the mind and leads to the spirit. Always begins with the natural, physical stuff that we created and leads to the spiritual. The problem is that there have been roadblocks set up. And the roadblocks are those who do not understand the scriptures and don't care to understand them. But just tell the story, as they say, of what's on the page as opposed to what it actually means. Now, the reason that's done, huh?
I was going to ask you something before you get to something else, because I'm visualizing what you just described. Okay, the church is the womb that leads us that we come into to lead us to that search for spirituality. If I'm a baby that's in this womb and I choose not to come out of this womb, I choose not to search for spirituality, I choose to stay right here and just receive my nourishment from this dead womb, then what becomes of me? Okay,
the first approach to that, what becomes you is you die in the womb. But the approach to that is this. We are not the ones to say that they're not being favored.
Okay.
There are people who are still in those places who are truly searching.
Yes.
They're just not strong enough or not curious enough to move away from them. So we don't have a right to, huh?
But I didn't say that.
I know. I'm on the heels of what you said. You said what happened to them, and I said they died. But I want to carry it a step further. And the step further is that, you remember, I always say to you, don't talk to people about, well, you're not a word church, so we this, we that. Why? Because we don't have a right to do that. The only thing we have a right to do is to deal with who we are. And if I deal with me, then I'm also dealing with you, but in a different manner. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because there are so many people who sit and look at what Diane just described, and they talk down to those people who are really searching. But guess what? The ones who are talking down have met the same impasse. They got the same block. What's the block? The one in the pulpit. Because they don't go beyond the stories that have been told since they were 10 years old. That's what the block is. And it doesn't matter whether you call yourself denominational or non-denominational, they do the same thing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you deal with it. The same roadblock is there. And it's up to us not only to recognize the roadblock that exists, but it's also up to us to make sure that we don't become a part of the roadblock. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because and right now, I think that what we are actually, by virtue of exalting or the feminine to the place where it should be, I think that what we're actually doing also is exalting the feminine in those places that we call church. I think we are also exalting them there. And let's face it, if it had not been for the feminine in those churches, who would we be?
And I heard a minister the other day say exactly the same thing. Don't put down the feminine. If it weren't for them, where would we be? So whatever we put in the macro, they may not understand it totally and fully,
but the elevation is there. And
I have one more, because we're still there. I'm just giving you these questions as they're pouring out of my head. What is spiritual abortion? It was tying in with what you were just...
Okay. Spiritual abortion is described in Hebrews when it says that once you have tasted truth and walk away from it, you cannot be prayed back. You have to come back on your own. It is more difficult for you to come out. Spiritual abortion is when you have tasted the truth and you choose to walk away from it, or you choose something over it. That's what spiritual abortion is. Okay?
Hit rewind button right again. When you said you choose something over it, could you give an example? When you say choose something over
Yeah.
the truth, could you give an example?
Yes. When we talk about, this is too much for me. I'm going back to where I was. When we talked about, remember we talked about Jesus, the human, becoming messianic? There were those who walked away. They chose something over it.
Okay.
You see?
Yes.
See, go ahead.
I just, the thing I was going to make earlier is that what makes this all so wonderfully, whatever, infuriating, in a sense, and not in that sense, is that the ego and judgment just doesn't like staying on the sidelines. So the holier than thou thing is always there in the shadows, right? But in the same token, the whole idea of walking away once you've tasted, you know, I'm not ready for this wilderness journey. I'm too close to the chariot of fire. That's all part of it too, I think. So it's still not something you can say for somebody else. So,
Right.
do you know what I mean? If you thought about it literally, they're frustrated, I'm leaving this church, I'm going to try something new, and then they go back because, whoa, that was too much.
Right.
And we've been in those settings, like, whoa, these people, man, I mean, they're way off the horizon from what I thought, right? So you say they're flaky, there's something wrong, or so you go back to what you know.
Right.
Or else you're stuck kind of now in between what. So a lot of people go back, doesn't mean they'd never go back, you know, they go back to the touchstone they know, so to speak. It doesn't mean they wouldn't, eventually that energy wouldn't build in them again to break out again.
Right.
So you can't, you gotta just don't judge other people.
Along with Richard, I mean,
Yeah.
as people, they have their own journey, their own process, and I think one of the great things about being here is that you have the freedom to respect whatever it is that other people choose.
Right.
Whether that's atheism, which could very well lead them back to something like this,
Yes.
or staying in the church that they grew up in, whether they're choosing to search or not search. I don't know, it has a whole lot to do with us.
See, I have sheep not of this pasture.
Right.
There are many pathways to enlightenment. And the moment that you think is not, that's when you shut down your opportunity.
But I think too, and it's what I think is given rise to all of the stresses we feel, is as a culture, it seems to me, we've pulled away from each other. So you don't have that easy interaction we used to have, right? So if you go all the way down to a quark that exists for an instant, bounces off something else, there's a transfer or something of energy, and then boom. That's in a very extreme sort of scientific way. I mean, in a way, to me, that's kind of a model of what I'm talking about. So the more you make the growth, whatever you want to call it, awareness process, so much more difficult. Not if you spend time alone, but if you're lonely. And I think it's that aspect of us that culturally, I don't know what, we've reinforced, created, or whatever, which makes it harder for people to enjoy. I'm incredibly selfish. I want to be around people all the time. I want to hear what you have to say. And I want to fight with it because I selfishly feel like I will come away better for that. And maybe there's a little part of me that thinks, maybe you too, you know? So if I got to sit in my house all day, I can have all kinds of conversations, but they're never kind of tested. So I don't, am I growing or just going in circles?
And see, that's the whole thing. What you just described is when we come together as teachers. That's what you just described. we test what we see or what we think we see through each other. This whole idea of death that we're going to deal with is for us to come out of it with an understanding, not one, but with an understanding, period. And if we were to be separate, continuously separate in our research, in our thinking, it wouldn't happen. But what happens? We come together for 4 days, well, actually 3 days. We come together for 3 intense days of eating together, studying together. Everything we do is together. So that if a thought comes that did not come when we were sitting around the table, we are there available to each other. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's the same principle. Last night I had a vision, and we were in Philly, and I cannot explain exactly what it looked like, but we were one body, one image. And the image that we were, that I actually saw, was not an image of this physical, that we, in the separate stuff. We were one body, and we were, it was as though each one was representative of something, a part of the universe that all of us needed. And by virtue of coming together, it makes us available to mankind. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's what I saw. That's us. So we have to test each other. And we do it all the time. And when we come back, what happens? It's always a fresh start.
It is.
It's always another rung on the ladder that's been tried. That's been, whatever. Yeah, that word I can't think of.
There's a shift that takes place.
That's the shift. The shift is important. You're right, it is the shift that takes place. Last week I had to tell some people that they couldn't go because it was getting out of hand in terms of people thinking they would be going away on a trip. And it was just getting too big. And actually transportation also was a problem because we travel everywhere together as a group, and we didn't want the people to feel obligated to take us. But we could not afford to change the flavor of what we do. And one of the persons with whom I was speaking was saying that they wanted to go to Amish country. And I said to them, we may or may not go. We were supposed to go last year, but we never got there. And I told them that when we get there Thursday, we get to get running. We go to Kensington Thursday, and Friday morning we back in session. Saturday, we may get to Amish country, we may not. We probably back in session. Sunday, we back in session. Those kinds of things. And they were like, but I thought that you all were going to the Amish. No, that's not necessary. We don't know that. But guess what? If we do go, it's not for us to visit the Amish.
You working?
It's for us, yeah. It's for us to absorb, exchange energy. That's if we do, wherever we go, that's what we do. That's what we do. And the other thing that got me was that, and I just might go ahead and talk about what I said. That got me was that when we are here, nobody comes. Nobody pressures us because they know they can't talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I asked the question, what you want to do? Why are we there? Because the only people who can talk are the teachers and Philadelphia people. So now they understand. And my last thing to them was, we go get a trip for us. For all of us to go someplace. That's what we're going to do. So anyway, when we look at this thing from the perspective of our being there, it's like being in a womb of darkness, of confusion. And we have to bring life out of that. Suppose for a moment that the whole reason that my birth was the way it is because my daddy was destined to go to Philly, and that was going to lead me there eventually. And Philly because it was the first place of authority in this country before it shifted to D.C. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's one of the reasons Nick is in D.C. because of the place of authority. Maybe these bridges have to be brought together. And the area where we are in Philly is North Philly. Very, very rough. Very, very intensely dark, maybe?
Talking
Is-
inner city.
Well, right. It's your typical inner city, what's described as the inner city, I should say. But this is the thing that I thought about after I had talked to these people. We were right there in North Philly, right? You remember when we went to 8th and Diamond?
Where?
8th and Diamond.
Yeah.
2 blocks north of 8th and Diamond is Temple.
Yeah.
So right there on the edge of natural enlightenment, there is a community that has been forgotten. So we have to deal with that. And I believe that this whole concept that we're dealing with here is valuable to everyone around the world. We put it in the macro, and guess what happens? Other people pick it up.
Yeah.
The thing that you were telling us a few weeks ago about Warren Buffett, these are the things that are picked up. So, but it doesn't come without challenge. Rich was talking about challenge, resistance. That's the same thing with the sperm and the egg, isn't it? Resistance.
Yeah.
It comes with resistance. Without resistance, there's no life. Period.
Can I ask you something? Are you doing with the teachers the same thing Jesus did? Because it sounds like that way. When he'd be around the crowd, around people, but there was a time when he just took the disciples themselves.
Away from the multitude.
Yes.
Yes.
To take them and go into, to be in the womb.
Yeah.
To do what was necessary.
I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening.
Don't you wish you were a fly on that wall? Well, I mean, in the context of what we just said, you would almost think, traditionally, as the church would teach you, Jesus got the disciples together and he preached to them, sermonized to them, taught them. Maybe it was much more dynamic than that.
I don't know. Because I
You
mean,
just chill with them.
yeah, I
And
think
just
it's,
let things flow.
Yeah.
But that's dynamic in a way.
whether it's Jesus or him. I mean, I just think that it couldn't have been no better than what it is today. I mean, because we're getting the same thing.
I think that
You just get a way to breathe.
you're probably right in that what it does, it changes the energy. It helps us to share the energy. Sheldon made a statement to me. And he said, I guess he said this. When I said it, he said, when we are together as teachers, we're not separate, we're one. We're not individuals at all. We're one. Did you say that? When you one who said that?
I said that.
He will take credit for it. But yeah, I mean, he said that, and it's true. We move as a unit. The reason they provide the transportation is so that all of us can be in one place at one time. That's why they do it. So that's the unit, I guess, that you were talking about, being one. And it's not me being you make the comparison to what Jesus did. Think about this. That's what Jesus did, right?
Mhm.
Guess who facilitated?
Female?
Wow. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And this is the thing that gets me. When we come together, it's almost to a man, well, it is to a man that the expectation is that Bobby will facilitate.
Oh, it is?
Always. I mean, how many times have we come together? How many times have we come together?
Show me what you laughing about.
Always.
But why is that? Could it possibly be because the exaltation of the feminine? Because it's so suppressed in religious circles? Could that be it? Could it be because regardless of what we say or think or feel, it has to be nurtured in a womb? Could that be it? I don't know which one of those are true or either if one of them is at all. But I do know this. When we are together, there's not a struggle for us to talk about anything at all. So if you read the book of Thomas, you will see how in depth Jesus taught the disciples by virtue of what they talk about. So, but anyway.
I was just thinking there were some, of course, disciples that weren't written about in the books we have available in,
Yeah.
The traditional Bible, and that Mary did some teaching as well.
She did.
With just women, if I'm not mistaken.
But look at what's happening now. It's not just, and that was because of the culture. But look what's happening now. It's not just women, it's both. And to this day, if you're in the Southern Baptist Church, women can't teach men. No. Women can't be ushers. Because somebody might break in and beat the man up. I don't know. But they can't be ushers. So that paradigm have to be shifted. I'm gonna say this, then I'm probably almost finished. You remember the guy I was telling you about who's in my Monday night class?
Yes. The guy who's studying Hebrew.
No. The white guy who goes to, was a preacher in my class, goes to Southern Baptist Church. He called me. Matter of fact, he had called me 2 or 3 times when we caught up with each other. I spoke with him yesterday morning. He says, Brother James, I have a question for you. He went on to ask me the question concerning the presence of Jesus in the life of the apostles, and we got the answer. But this is the significant thing. He said to me, yeah, I'm in trouble again.
He said what?
I'm in trouble again because of what he's been saying, teaching. But guess who he's teaching? Ministers. He has 3 ministers who comes to him for answers. 3, they're not 3 pastors who comes to him for answers. And I said to him, you're not teaching 3 pastors. You're teaching hundreds of people. And he said, but I'm in trouble. I said, no, you're not. Because if you were, they wouldn't come back. They keep coming back because they want what you have. That's significant. Because the whole idea of it was, we recognize that as the necessity to get that energy into that congregation, that denominational type thing, so that it could be pervasive eventually. That's what he's doing. Is that not amazing? Is that not amazing? And I've always said one thing. It does not matter who teaches. as long as it's dark. They don't let me in.
It's a postcard.
Every time they let me in, they put me out again. So it doesn't matter.
The irony to that, though, is you're teaching this gentleman, right?
Mhm.
So they're just not aware of that.
Right.
They don't have a say-so in letting you in or not letting you in.
Right.
But he is in.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm in. Yeah, oh yeah.
It's
Oh yeah. I'm in so many. This is what happens. There are a lot of female ministers in my class. And when they start coming to the class, one of the complaints was that, you know, they don't never let them preach. Now they in the pulpit almost every Sunday. My thing to them was, don't worry about that. If you can accept what you're being taught and see it, doors will open. And they're just teaching them. So, if we can get the ego out of the way, we can get a lot done. The ego, edging God out. And the God that I'm talking about edging out is Elohim, who we are. If we can get past that and be who we were created to be, then humanity would benefit from it in a huge way. Any questions about that? Time you go to the film. Oh. I'm gonna leave you alone now. Eventually. Any comments or questions? None? We? Are we done?
What did we talk about?
Everything.
I can't make that the title of the video.
I don't know, you figure it out.
Well, I mean, if I understand, tell me if I understood correctly what you just said, basically. To allow yourself really to know who you are and not to be distracted with that knowing by the ego, to then create yourself as a false,
Is it?
There you go. Edging that out.
Yeah, that'll work.
Now,
Set the fire,
feminine
so
energy.
first,
That'll
make you look.
You're right. The issue, that's our problem, we have too many distractions. We allow things to distract us. Nothing can distract you unless you allow it to. You accept the distraction.
Sometimes I go looking for them. There's work to be
Most of the
done.
time.
You're so in my boat.
But
I don't want to do this right now.
suppose for a moment that we make it a point to disallow that. No distraction. Whatever comes before me, deal with it. Let it flow through. I'm not going to allow it to be a distraction. I found what works for me is I constantly talk to me about my priority. My priority is to see the light. That's my priority, to see the light. I've said to you that I love being a daddy above everything else. That hasn't changed. But also, there's one thing I don't know whether I said to you or not. If when I close my eyes, if anyone want to put anything on the stone, it doesn't matter, they don't do anything like that. If they want to put anything on the stone or do any eulogy, the only thing I want somebody to be able to say is that he was a good man. That's it. Nothing else matters.
Talking about distraction.
Nothing else matters.
I thought it was Sheldon.
Is that a distraction?
It's your day, Sheldon.
No, it was just a thought came in. If we allow the distractions because we don't want to deal with things that we need to deal with
Right.
within ourselves and
whatever we need to set in place in the universe also.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's the definition of a distraction. Distracts you from a true something. So,
I don't want to
As
deal with
opposed
the
to-
truth today, so
as
I
opposed
find
to
all
a-
these things.
Well, I've been there.
maybe
I've-
as opposed to Janice, a diversion.
Denise, you got it right.
I mean, occasionally you need a little break, so that's a diversion. You know, along the highway that you're, right?
And so you appreciate what you're really supposed to be doing.
Yes.
You need a break.
And you know, I have been in those places where someone, you know, going through some dealing with some stuff, and somebody start talking to me, I'll be, I don't want to hear it now. I don't want to hear it. All I'm saying at that point is I want to stay exactly where I am. So I don't do that anymore. But it didn't happen overnight. You understand what I'm saying? You have to, your desire have to be stronger. Your desire for enlightenment has to be stronger than your desire to be human. Did you get that?
The desire what?
Your desire for enlightenment has to be stronger than your desire to be human.
Can I tell you what I experienced?
And that, let me say this.
Finish,
Okay, hold on
please.
1 second, okay?
Yes, sir.
When your desire for enlightenment is stronger than your desire to be human, then ego is tamed. That there's nothing would tame the ego quicker than that.
I was on my way walking to the building, walking to work, into the building, and I saw myself coming out of my body, and it was so large. And it happened in an instant. Can you tell me what that meant?
That you need to go to the gym because it was so large. Take your spiritual exam.
You know,
No, well, seriously,
I was-
this is it. Our essence is far beyond what we see. Far beyond what we see. Have you heard people talk about the aura?
yeah.
It's out, right? So the energy that we are, not that we possess, the life that we are, is far beyond what we see with our natural eyes, of course.
Okay.
And just maybe Evelyn, the experience was for you to see that you are more than what you think you are.
Yeah, because I have my moments.
Yeah, that, and I would say to you, remember that moment, that when that happened,
Mhm.
and when you think the mean thoughts about you, or when you feel bad about you, think about that. See who you really are.
You know, everyone, let me, the way I would interpret what you said, you're doing that all the time, but there was a particular moment when you noticed it.
I can accept that, yeah. So remember when you accept it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to figure out what you were doing, that's right.
Yeah, because all of us are changing.
Because it won't work the same.
And I don't mean change in the sense of, you know, I'm a changed man. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
There is a transformation taking place. What's that scripture? 12th chapter of Romans. Be ye transformed.
Yeah, but
The renewing of your mind.
Romans, and it's something.
12, 1 and 2 and 3. Be you transformed by the renewing of your, hear that? Transform, metamorphosis.
There's something else too, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know the rest.
Come on, now it's something about your heart, right?
Yeah.
Transform by renewing your mind.
But that's what I want to deal with, the renewal thing, the transformation. But when you
You're not
renew
conformed
your
to this world,
mind,
be transformed.
that's when you are transformed. When you bring your mind under submission to your spirit, to who you are, that's when the transformation takes place from being human to being who you were created to be. That's the transformation. Maybe you was transformed.
And you know, I heard this, I was listening to this commercial, and at the end of it, this man was saying, think greater.
Yeah.
And that has been sticking with me all week, to think greater thoughts. you know, realizing who you really are.
And when you do that, it makes a difference in your life. What you got, Bob?
Present your body as a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable, blah, blah, blah. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you might prove what is that good and acceptable, perfect will of God.
Listen to that. Be not conformed to the world. Don't be distracted by this physical stuff around you. Allow the metamorphosis to take place by renewing your mind. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Pastor,
Yes,
can I
Doc.
share something?
I normally don't, but this is kind of like heavy, it's hitting me. And I was gonna talk to Audrey about it later today. But it was something that was brought up, that we tapped onto early when we was talking about the feminine, the aspect of the feminine. The heaviness that is so many women that are coming cars in my path.
The essence of who they are has been suppressed so hard that they can't even see who they are. Can't see the beauty in them. They can't even see their purpose for being here. And I've been trying to make space for 2 weeks now, but it's just so
You're trying to do what?
make space for them to see.
Oh, okay. But
If they could see what God sees and what I see, and it's so heavy, and the pain that I feel, it's just heavy. I just go in my yard, kind of like release it. I got an oasis in my backyard now, God. But I'm just saying it's just so heavy, and just now it just really hit me, the essence of when Audrey had said it, that it's been suppressed for so long. And it's like a wall is there, and it can't be torn down. You could just, it's hard for me to describe what I'm seeing and what I feel when I'm around them and when they're talking to me, you know. It's just so heavy.
two things. One, they have to create space, and then you take the opportunity. That's the first thing. Two, the reason that you feel, and when I say you, I'm using it in the English plural. The reason that you feel what you experience is because you are one with them, and you feel that pain. You see what I'm talking about? That's why, because all of us are the same, are we not? And that's why you can feel that pain. So you know, allow them to create the space, and then walk in that space. We as a people have to come to a realization that not only are we connected by virtue of bloodlines, but we're connected by virtue of spirit. And there are things you're going to feel that I'm not going to feel, and you're going to feel that I'm not going to feel. But at the same time, it is up to us to deal with it. And if we deal with it, what we call individually, then it becomes a collective effort. We have to move beyond where we are when it comes to feeling sorry for somebody.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Do we feel that way the way Diane do? Is it because something within us that we need to deal with?
Of course, it's always that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I
It's-
didn't,
it's always
that's
that.
what I didn't want to say. I mean,
Yeah.
my concern, but I say this not just to you, I say it to myself. How could you help someone else? I don't want you to share my misery. Feel me,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
but somehow if there's any kind of transformation, it's a sense of there's something positive, new, possible, et cetera, et cetera. How are you going to do that unless you either got good words that you practiced, and I'm willing to believe whatever you say, or what you exude, what you share with me that is you, gives me that sense of promise. Follow me?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think in a certain sense, when you feel the pain of others, it's not when you recognize the pain of others, but when you let it get into you, it's because there's something in you that, what do I want to say, can absorb it, because you got that difficulty, that challenge of it in you too. So if it's other women, you got to ask yourself if you're in that equation too somewhere, and if being more aware, alive about who and what the beauty of you is, if in itself you exude that more, and that gives them a sense of an idea of what they could be.
Because we are each other's mirror.
Yeah, that's a, that's
I
what,
dealt
that's what
with,
you described.
and then it was one of them, just for example, one of them, when I had her standing in front of the mirror, she couldn't do nothing. I went home and I asked God, what is it in me that I'm mirroring? And someone had said something to me earlier that week about hair, and we got everything about diva. And the voice just spoke loudly, because Pastor always say you lead by example. Every now and then when I go to work, I put on a wig, because it's the atmosphere of what I deal with at work and the ignorance, you know, of everything. When I walked in Monday morning, they were like, where's your hair? And I said, I lead by example. I'm not my hair. I chose not to put the wig on today. It's too hot outside.
That's right.
Now there.
Now you go.
And you know, and then, I mean, the men, you know, they don't know what they're like. Look, one guy just said, "That's you, Miss D. You look 10 years younger." All the little, you know, from everybody else, I don't phase it. And I was telling her, when you walk, something she kept saying, what people say at work, and I said, baby, shouldn't matter to you what anybody says, what your ex says, what your co-workers, what the women said. You got to see the beauty in you. And so the wig coming off, someone just asked me a question, and I said, I can't tell someone or get them to see something if within I have to lead by example. The wig is off and it ain't coming back on. So see it, deal with it. I ain't my hair.
Okay? And that's the hair, the clothes, the house, the job, the money. Those are distractions that we have to get beyond. And then, because it's not just the beauty, when Diane talks about the beauty in them, it's also a beauty in us as males that we don't see, that we're afraid of. And because we're afraid of it because it's considered feminine. That's what we're afraid of. I mean, I remember when Jaden was playing a couple of years ago, he plays football, and he wanted to wear pink gloves. And the coach told him, if you wear pink gloves, either he told him you can't play in the next game, or you're going to have to run laps, whatever it was. And Jaden says to the coach, says to his mama, I'm wearing pink gloves. And she said, well, you know what the coach said. And he said, wearing pink gloves means more to me than what he gonna do to me. She said, suppose he put you off the team. He said, I won't be on the team, but I'm wearing pink gloves. And that's what he was. You see what I'm talking about?
And he wore them for
Cancer.
I thought so.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You cannot allow distractions to move you from what your core beliefs are. You have to have core beliefs, okay? And the core beliefs has to be based upon what? Enlightenment. Because the things that we have held so dearly as core beliefs are the things that really has led us astray. Okay, I'm done. So, Barbara?
Janice and I were talking the other day, and Janice said that she just now put the I Know Who You Really Are on the site. And what Diana just said is almost like she was reading I Know Who You Really Are. And I don't know when the last time you read that. But it's only when we know when we...
I haven't read it.
Okay. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
that you have read it, even though you haven't read it.
But you know, it's just amazing what you said. That was what was
the voice that I hear was like, know who you really are. And it was just so easy, because it's easy to allow outside forces, and even when you deal with work and the persona of being professional and all of that. It was something that I even shared with Jake some months back, and someone made the statement, and I said, he was like, Mom, they're trying to tell me I got to cut my hair. I can't have this job because I got to cut my hair, and it's like the stereotype of if a black man has twists, then he's a thug. And he was like, I'm not a thug. And I said, I know, baby, I didn't raise a thug. He said, I'm not going to cut my hair. And I said, that's what you believe on, then stand on it. That job's just not meant for you. And someone told me I was wrong for saying that, about the image of a black man. I said, but we choose if we're going to fall into those stereotypes and those images that we could create it and society has created. Jay know he's not a thug. So we're going to tell every black man to cut his hair just so he can get a job?
Well, if you want my job, if I want you, and you will cut your hair.
I understand what you're saying with that right there, but he wasn't going to apply for a job in corporate America.
That's one of the reasons Molly cut her hair. If if that's what they require, if you want that job.
I understand what you're saying too.
So, but then I don't think that there is any such thing as a typical black man, because we're different. Typical is based upon society's definition of what it accepts and what it doesn't accept. Bottom line. So, is Richard a typical white man? No.
I was going to say some of us aren't even.
No.
Some of us aren't even black.
Yeah.
I'm just making a joke.
Yeah, right.
I'm
but
not a black
but
man.
you understand what I'm saying? All of us are different. But anyway.
Anyway, I said that to say that it's like it had to have its time, and I think for Philadelphia also it's time. So I'll end with just the end of that. You're fearfully and wonderfully made, my creation, my image, with my love. Now that you are able to see the you that I know, the you that I see. When you know you know God. When you know God, you know you. The truth of light that we are, and the light of truth that we are, has us to know that light and truth are one, as we are one. Amen.
Amen.